Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, all praises and the blessing is due to Yahweh by Hashem HaMashiach or Malak Yahushai. Secondly, Brother Yardan, WFI Detroit, coming back at you with yet another gold cut. Before I dive into this lesson, I want to give a warm welcome to the men, women, and children that are laboring day in and day out. That labor consists of reading, praying, fasting, studying, and of course, presenting your body a living sacrifice to Yahweh Hashem HaMashiach. Now, in this lesson, I want to go over the book of Jonah. I won't be going into the entire book and going into in-depthly, but chiefly the main things that stood out to me. Now, of course, naturally I have the Bible, but I also have Reader's Digest, Who's Who in the Bible, and Illustrated Biographical Dictionary. I won't read the entire account, but essentially what this book is, it details every character of the Bible from Abimelech down to Agrippa. That means it also holds names such as John Hyrcanus, Judas Maccabees, Jonathan, Hoshea, Hymenaeus, so on and so forth. But today we're focusing on Jonah. Jonah was an 8th century BC prophet from Gath Hepher, a small Galilean town near Nazareth. He first appears in the Bible to foretell that King Jeroboam II of Israel will restore the borders of the nation from the entrance of Hamath as far as the Sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, in 2 Kings 14-25. That is, to the approximate northern limit of the kingdom under Solomon, but not as far south as Solomon's had stretched. The book of Jonah, which contains the well-known story about him, was probably written much later between the 6th and 4th century BC at a time, and I want to pause because I'm going to have to give sense of something, because this is the way that is going to word itself is a common way that you may find extra biblical sources and or literature to how they define Most High's relationship with nations. But you have to chew the meat and spit out the bones, and other times you have to, properly make sense of it through the Spirit. That said, continuing on, at that time, when it is central idea that God is concerned with all nations, not just Israel. Now, a lot of people may read that and say, oh, no, I'm not dealing with this, I'm not dealing with that. Right? Let's break it down through the Spirit. Now, what does it mean when the Lord said, or when it reads that God is concerned with all nations? The Lord is concerned with all nations, but you can't hear that in your ears and assume that the Most High now loves all these nations and now the doors of salvation is opened up towards everybody and they can repent with you and they're going to get beamed up. That's not what that means, right? The Most High is concerned as far as he has his hand in how this civilization is ruled and what happens in it. I want to follow that up with a precept in the book of Proverbs, chapter 21. All right. Proverbs 21 and verse 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. And so he does with these nations. So don't think that just because the Most High only loves Israel and has a relationship with us, that he's not controlling what's happening in this city and or that city and or in that nation, right? This whole world and the fullness thereof belongs to the Most High God. Even when you read in the book of Sirach, the 18th chapter, which I'll pull up, he that liveth forever hath created all things in general. The Lord only is righteous, and there is none other but he, who governed the whole world with the palm of his hand, and all things obey his will. For he is the king of all, by his power dividing holy things among them from profane. To whom he hath given power to declare his works, and who shall find out his noble acts. So many things that the Lord has done with these nations that, our mind can only comprehend such a few. For an example, we read in the book of Exodus where the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. That's discovered in the book of Romans. We found out in the book of Ezra that the Lord tweaked and or enabled Cyrus' heart to allow Israel to go back to Jerusalem. And he did the same with he did the same in the book of Nehemiah. But again, all this can't be confused with you misunderstanding that the Lord is concerned with these other nations, right? That doesn't mean that he loves them. Amos 3:2 still stands. Romans 9:1 on down still stands. Only Israel getting beamed up into the chariot still stand, right? Psalms 2:8 still stands. These nations are going into slavery for what they did towards the children of men, chiefly towards children of Israel, that are going to get beamed up with us. They're going to be in hardcore bondage and slavery. These curses are going to fall upon them. They're going to get whoops and lashes, right? And we're going to police them in the kingdom. So again, the Lord is concerned with all nations, but don't hear that and believe in your mind that now he loves them all. That's not the case. Now that we got that off the way, continue reading. Because if you may find yourself in extra biblical books, those are books that touch on the Bible and filter through the scriptures, right? That may support or validate the Bible. We may hear certain terminologies or phrases that may sound one way, but it's not really, the way that you may think it, right? Because I actually seen this, here and there. God is concerned with all nations, not just Israel, had become an important theme in Word of Jews. Jonah is unique among the 12 minor prophets in that his book contains little prophecy. It's single oracle statement, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. That's Jonah 3:4. Requires only 8 words in the English translation. Instead of prophecies, the book tells how Jonah was swallowed by a great fish and survived in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Now that 3 days and 3 nights is something that we find in the New Testament. What you call the relationship or dots connecting from the old and new is biblical typology. I want to pull up the definition before me. Biblical typology is the study of patterns within scriptures where a person or event, institution foreshadows a greater reality, later fulfilled, often referred to as type in the Old Testament, and its counterpart, the antitype in the New Testament. It serves as a prophetic symbol indicating how elements of the Old Testament represents future events or figures, particularly those in the New Testament. For example, the flood of Noah is seen as a type that prefigures baptism, right? Which can be true to an extent, right? And what do we see with Jonah? Him being in a fish's belly for 3 days and 3 nights. And where do we find this similar account in the New Testament with Yahushua being in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights? What is this? What is the greater picture? What does this really represent? I'll get to it, but I want to read this real quick. The tale begins with the Lord's command to Jonah: "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." That's Jonah 1 and 2. Right now, from there, I can really just dive into the scriptures. But we see the first thing, and that's a command from the Lord. Now, I believe the Lord said in the book of Isaiah 55 and 11, that my word will not return void unto me. So let's get it real quick. I get the NIV. So is my word that goes from my mouth, it will not return to me empty, but I will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. And that's something we have to remember in our own lives. The Lord set you in this place, the Lord set you in this lot for dispensation of time, then you must fulfill it, right? A lot of men may think, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't know. And that's not really my cup of tea. Maybe that's what Jonah thought. Who really knows? It doesn't go into great detail. But nevertheless, although he may not have said that verbatim, your actions speak for itself, right? a painting is worth 1,000 words. So with that said, I want to get into the book. This is Book of Jonah. So again, this is Jonah defying the words of the Lord. Thus saith Yahweh Shema Shai. And as a result, he was obviously swallowed up by the fish. Before I go a little bit deeper into that point, I want to touch on this as well. In verse 5, the mariners were afraid and cried every man unto his God and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea to lighten of them. But Jonah was gone into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. But men of that time understood and perceived what judgment was of God. They attributed natural disasters and perhaps personal disasters as a judgment of Yahweh Shema Shai. And that's what you call being circumspect, because then and only then it'll really humble you to the point where you have to examine yourself and wonder where you went wrong. Whereas now in this modern day life, where a man may experience such tribulations, he'll chalk it up to fate. He'll call it bad luck. He'll call it a bad day, when in reality, he's getting judged from Yahweh Shema Shai. So what happened with Jonah? This is judgment, because he defied his orders and he fell asleep in his bottom of the ship. And the Lord said in the book of Proverbs, I want to say 24, Proverbs 24 and 33, a little folding of the hands, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one traveleth. That's great paraphrasing, but nevertheless, this is applied to Jonah, right? Because it reads, into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. So the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, what meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise, call upon thy God, if so be that God will think upon us that we perish not. And they said every one to his fellow, come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. Then said they unto him, tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us. What is thine occupation, and whence comest thou? What is thy country, and of what people art thou? And so they casted lots. In other words, that's drawing the short stick, right? To confirm that you are the person responsible for us going through this tribulation. And so they asked him these questions. They're grilling him. They're interrogating him, because he's responsible for this ship swaying in a storm. His response is, and said I unto them, I am in Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land. Then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, why hast thou done this? So men in the ancient world greatly understood the name Yahweh Shema Shai, right? Or Yahweh. And so they were greatly afraid, but yet every man worshiped his own God. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, when judgment happens, man is going to acknowledge that this is from the Lord. And Jonah went off again because he said, I fear the Lord, and yet did not do what he said. You can't say that you fear the Lord and neglect the Lord's voice. I mean, we'll be complete hypocrites. So again, what we're learning so far is that, one, you cannot willingly run from thus saith the Lord. If the Lord sets you out for a certain task, you must fulfill it. The second thing we've learned is, mercy, which we'll get to. But the second thing we learned is you can't be slothful in your work. Do what the Lord said, and you cannot be slothful. I mean, even the entire story of Jonah is all mercy. That's another thing that we learn. The Lord, he could have had Jonah have an aneurysm, a stroke. He could have made him have a heart attack in the bottom of the ship. And yet, he woke him up through the spirit of another man. Not everybody has the sure mercies of David. David, theoretically, according to the law, was meant to die. Jonah